But speaking of Too Hot for TV, you reviewed Monkey Man, and quite a few people didn't quite like what you had to say about it, Jacob.
Yeah, apparently there's some pushback here, and it comes from a couple of communities, and ironically enough, not the community that you would think. So a little bit of backstory here. This is a film that is directed, written, and starred by Dev Patel, who's the person in the picture there. You may remember him from Slugdog Millionaire. He was on the UK TV show Skins for a couple of seasons, so he's
And
been
then he
around for
grew up.
exactly by a lot. But so he's in charge mostly of this film. This film is also produced by Jordan Peele, and Jordan Peele, as you know, is a guy who has pretty much gotten over in Hollywood over the last, could say, decade up to this point, about doing these movies that somehow manage to infuse a lot of social justice messaging into the film. So it's like it's not just he's doing horror movies; he's doing horror movies with a message. And when you heard he was going to be a producer of this movie, I probably should have seen this coming, because what you have here is that think it's basically a John Wick ripoff film that has a little bit of social messaging and tied into it. Now, what is the premise here? You have a guy called the Monkey Man, and the lore of this movie. So if you're going into this, you know nothing about this. There's two things happening here. One is that this film pushes very heavily Hinduism. If you don't know the details of the Hindu religion, Hinduism is a religion that's been around for a very, very long time, and there's put it this way, there's millions of quote unquote deities in Hinduism, which may or may not be demons, but that's for a whole other conversation. But just in the context of this movie, one of the deities that they follow is one called like Ramadan, which is one a half man, half monkey type creature. So that's kind of what the premise of the film is all about. And then Dev Patel takes up this lore. The whole concept here is that him and his mother was attacked like 20 something years ago. His mother was then raped and then brutally murdered in front of him. One of the villains here, who's just like cartoonishly evil, which kind of is a trope in Indian movies, but raped his mother in front of him, and then poured gasoline all over her body and then lit her on fire. And then the kid tried to put out the flames on his mother's dying body and then burned his hands severely. So, of course, understanding that concept, he wants a little bit of revenge. I think that's understandable, right? But in the context of trying to get revenge, he tries to break through this criminal organization where this guy is, because he goes out there and parties with these, totally not Eastern European sex trafficked women. And in the course of doing this, he ends up trying to kill the guy. He fails miserably, and then he kind of goes into exile. And in the course of being in exile, he comes across this tribe, and I know this sounds ridiculous, but this is real, a tribe of ancient indigenous transgender warriors. So, yeah, you probably weren't expecting us to go there, but apparently this is a real group of individuals in India, and what you see here is that there's a group that's called, what exactly was the name of this group real quick, if I can just find it off the review here real quick. They did have a name for these people, but I can't look into it. I'm pretty sure you guys can find it on here, but yeah, so these individuals worship a half man, half woman type deity that's in Hinduism, which looks a
Shiva.
lot. Hmm?
Shiva, right?
I don't think it's Shiva. I think it's another one. Like Shiva's obviously like one of the big ones, but I think this one specifically was another one. I'll have to find this out. I'm looking at my review here. I couldn't find the exact name of this group of people, but I'll shoot it to you in just a second. But so because of that, they believe that by worshiping this deity, that by honoring it, by becoming men wearing humiliating feminized clothes, that they're somehow giving praise and veneration to this deity. It sounds like a lot like a modern day Hollywood humiliation ritual. So you may just find a little bit of the origin of this story. And they I'm not even lying here. This sounds ridiculous, but it's true. At one point in the movie, he goes through a training montage with the transgender people, right? So he's literally like sitting there learning they teach him how to fight. They literally teach him how to fight one-on-one
We're
combat
gonna
while he's
teach
in
you
the
how to fight like a woman.
exactly. And oh my god. And here's the thing, like they all look like Thai ladyboys in the context of the film, but they're
So
supposed
this
to be like
becomes ever more relevant. How about
exactly.
that?
So they become like real. Okay, somebody finally shot it over to me. So they're called the Hera. This is the name of this group of people, and they're, like I said, an ancient transgender group. Because at one point in the movie, like right before we introduce this group, there's like one of these like news reports in passing, and they're talking about, it's like, oh, and today the president, who's like the villain of the movie, it's like the president was found attacking this group of transgendered people at somewhere in the forest somewhere, and it's like, that seems very odd to just like throw that in there in the context of this movie and not like mean something. It's like we're talking about a story of like a guy trying to get revenge for his mother who was brutally murdered in front of him, and all of a sudden we're mentioning a news report about transgender people. Well, lo and behold, they actually become a big part of this film later on. And when he finally does get the rematch against the guy that he's trying to kill, all of a sudden, guess who shows up? It's the trans people, and they're all wearing their full warrior garb, and they go on and brutally murder most of these guys. I guess you can say his crew, his cannon fodder crew, just start brutally slaughtering these people to show that, you know, they're not poor, defenseless transgender people, even though they're literally living in a hole in the forest, because that's the only way they can keep the man from killing them. So like they're trying to portray them as victims
wait,
and not victims.
wait. Do they have to dilate the forest hole?
Oh God, I don't know. I don't know. It sounds bad. I hope not, but this is kind of like where we're at here. And yeah, so the film just goes completely off the rails here at this point, and then it just becomes Dev Patel going one on one with this kind of like Hindu cult leader, and they basically just stab each other until one of them dies, and then that is the end of the movie. That's the film. So the film, the message the film is trying to portray here is that it's trying to make social commentary in a John Wick style movie about the Indian caste system, about the treatment of Muslims in India, because that was another thing that they also put in there, and then the treatment of transgender people in India as well. So if you're going in there watching the trailer, you think, oh, this seems like a cool action movie I could spend a couple hours watching, don't, because it's actually not. It's basically a John Wick remake and rip off with a bunch of social messaging in between. So if you're not expecting to sit here and enjoy a little bit of, you know, progressive propaganda in your face, probably skip this movie, but probably skip this one.
Yeah, I
So,
mean that's hilarious, honestly. The way that you paint the picture of these, I just think of these like little like 4'10" um lady boy. Oh no.
yeah, so this is what they look like in real life. Now, they looked very similar to this in the movie, but obviously they tried to give him a little bit of a more warrior garb in the film too, because they had to also portray him as like badasses too in the movie. They couldn't just be like complete like victims, like, oh no, the government's trying to kill us. It's like, no, but we can defend ourselves still, even though we just complained about the fact that we couldn't defend ourselves like 40 minutes ago. So and you can
Yeah.
hear like Patel, and he did like a red carpet interview about this too, and he was so excited about being able to portray this story here, because it was like, well, you know, if you look at, you know, the Hindu culture in India, and it's like they've always acknowledged a third gender, so they're way more far progressed than we are here in the U.S. and in the U.K. It's like, just because trannies have been a thing longer in India than the developed world doesn't exactly mean that that's a good thing. Like you said, you're literally making a movie complaining about the Indian caste system, but it's like, hey, but they got transgenders though. Isn't that a positive? It's like, is it really a positive?
Which is a
All things
product of
considered,
the caste system.
literally, it's a product of the caste system. Yeah, so this movie doesn't know what it wants to be. Like it's absolutely ridiculous. And yeah, like I said, I know the way that I described it, it sounds completely asinine and insane. And all I have to say is that that is exactly what this movie is.